So welcome to YouTube. You've officially landed in the host part of our YouTube channel. Now, for the last 4 years, me and Lauren have been sharing so much of our lifestyle content, our travels and everything else. But what we haven't really fully shared or showcased on our YouTube channel is what's actually happening within the host platform. And since me and Lauren launched it a year and a half ago, it's gone from strength to strength, and the transformations within the platform have been absolutely incredible. And so I wanted to start 2025 with introducing more of our teachings on our YouTube, so it's more accessible for other people outside of our platform to get informed with this life-changing information and knowledge that me and Lauren have been blessed with channeling. And I think before we even get into this, we launched Host a year and a half ago, but actually me and Lauren have been in this teaching space for a very, very, very long time. Me specifically for coming on 9 years, and Lauren pretty much around the same time. And although I come from a meditation background and Lauren come from a Reiki background, our union and coming together really brought about so much more deeper awareness, not only of human suffering and understanding how to actually work through that, but a number of years ago, we kind of channeled the 7 laws of self-transformation, which is basically what the host platform is built off the back of. And what that really is, it's a healing system designed to help you integrate mainly your shadows, but to also help you awaken your divinity. And those that come through the platform are elevated by the vibration that host holds and the frequency, but it's the information, it's the knowledge, it's the understanding of the human conditioning, but it's also the awakening of the deep spirituality within all of us. And so that's what we're going to be sharing more of on our YouTube channel. And today I'm going to be giving a little bit of an introduction as to what those laws are, and how they came to be, and the importance of having this sacred knowledge, so that actually we can awaken from within and we can co-create a new world, a new reality that is more aligned to who we truly are, beyond the human suffering that so many of us get caught up in and pick up as a result of generational, physical, emotional condition of the body. So I really, really hope you enjoy this mini series. I don't know how long it's going to last, but use this information, absorb it, soak it in, allow this work, this knowledge to go to work within you. And most of the time it's about being receptive. It's about being open to just absorbing information. And then what happens through the absorbing of information is you'll begin to actualize it more in your everyday life. So what we do, we absorb information and then we actualize the information through our life experiences. And that's what makes it real. That's what makes it relatable. And so before we even get into the 7 laws, I'm gonna go to and fro between our story, my past, and how that's created the foundations of the teachings that me and Lauren teach together now. And I remember a very long time ago, shout out to my little sister, Abigail, that in my earlier days of awakening, before I'd even met Lauren, before Lauren was even on the radar, I remember her giving me a book for Christmas one year, and it was all to do with the chakras. And at the time, I didn't really feel connected to the chakras. I didn't really understand the chakras. And I think the one thing that was evident when I met Lauren is just how connected she was. She had already created so much knowledge and understanding around the chakras. But at that point, I still hadn't fully connected to those teachings, and they hadn't become fully apparent as to how important the chakra system is within our body, which I'm going to be going into today. But I think it was probably about 2 years after that me and Lauren have been together that I woke up one morning and I was just like, okay, get me a board, get me a pen, I can feel something coming through. And I just started to write. And actually what happened was, in that moment, I birthed through, or I channeled these 7 laws of self-transformation. I just began to write them all out. For anybody that's aware of the host platform, we have, the law of acknowledgement, the law of awareness, so many laws, but they're actually steps. Steps to healing trauma and awakening. And I remember writing them down on a board, and then I remember Lauren looking at that board and going, these are all linked to the chakras. And then something just clicked. Something clicked, and it was like, okay, we have something here. This is something we knew we just come to teach, but we didn't fully know it. And actually, it would be a year and a half before I actually went back to that board and picked up those laws and began to develop something alongside Lauren that we recognized that actually not only were these powerful teachings, but these were like activations. This was like the whole activation system for human beings. And we've seen it time and time again that those that come into contact with the platform and those that commit to change and transformation and go through this process, they get activated. And that activation is really the activation of your chakra system, the activation of your healing, but also the activation of your awakening. And I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in this world and spirituality and spiritual community that you can get lost really quick. And there's so many teachings out there. But I think what we brought forth was just a whole understanding of the whole concept and design of not only our humanity, but our spirituality. And so it became quite apparent very fast that me and Lauren actually had something here. And I think as the next year and a half went on, we began to recognize and it began to unfold for us. And then we launched our program. And as we launched our program, we continued to work on it, continued to build on it, continued to develop the teachings. And now it is what it is, where, although me and Lauren are still learning more and more about our teachings and what we've come here to teach, the foundations are there within the teachings. And I'm actually going to go into understanding some of them foundations today. And we're going to start off with the importance of understanding the chakra system and the importance of how the chakra system is actually affecting your everyday life. And more importantly, it's not only just about understanding the chakra system, but it's also about how to address your chakras, how to understand how to feel, how to heal, how to recognize your blocks. Because the thing is, for most of us, is we become so disassociated from our bodies that we don't actually take time to consciously process what we're feeling. And this is something that is also very apparent, that when you come into this area of work, especially when it comes to shadow work, when you begin to truly awaken, what we do is we enter a period of grieving. And anybody that's ever come into the healing space, no matter whether they've had an out of body transcended experience, they will have to come back into their body. And at some point, they will have to start working on the generational trauma that exists within the body. Now, I think what most of us have done is we've developed all of these coping mechanisms and strategies that actually keep us out of our body. So whether that's through TV or gadgets or addictions or future thinking or thought patterns, like most of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, we're not actually in tune with our body. In fact, most of us are a movement away from our body. And the only time we actually really recognize anything that's going on is we're met with a pain, a discomfort, or an emotion. But outside of that awareness, we're not fully in tune with what's going on within me. How do I actually feel? And I think this is the first step that anybody takes on awakening or moving through the process of healing and awakening, is they begin to become more in contact with their body. Now, what happens when you come closer to your body and you begin to start becoming aware of your body and you start to recognize, how am I actually feeling? You become confronted with a whole load of emotional content that hasn't been dealt with. Because as human beings, we've programmed and wired ourselves to avoid that. And so we avoid that in every aspect of our lives. We avoid getting uncomfortable. We avoid committing into our jobs. We avoid committing into our relationships. Everything that we do then becomes about how to navigate the discomfort that we feel within the body. And so when we come into a space of healing, we come into a space of discomfort. I mean, let's be honest, if healing was like easy, everybody would be awakened, right? We'd all be connected to our divinity. But the truth is, when you start coming closer to your body, to your emotions, you start coming closer to the discomfort you are feeling, yet you haven't taken time to address because you've been in a state of avoidance. And that's where the first step of healing really begins. And what we find is those that are ready to address their emotions, those that are ready to take the step in their lives to actually opening themselves back up, have to deal with the emotional content first. And so what happens is, as somebody addresses that emotional content, they come into a process of grieving. And I know it sounds mental, and the first thing we think is grieving is that I haven't lost anybody, or maybe I have lost somebody, but I'm talking about the grief of yourself, the grieving of what you've been through, the grieving of the fact that you are carrying so much emotional content that you haven't slowed down and taken time to process. So anybody that activates any kind of healing, they move into a state of grieving. And now, as a basic understanding of grieving, if you look at heart space and the heart chakra, right? The heart chakra is what allows us to grieve. If you look what happens when we start working on our traumas is we bring acceptance into it, we bring compassion, we bring empathy, we bring love, we bring forgiveness. And actually what happens is as we come into contact with that emotional content and we begin to process it, it's the passage of grief that allows us to feel those emotions, that allows us to reconnect with those experiences and for those emotions to be moved out through the body. So if it's not the battery, it's the memory card. Okay, so back on track. So when we come into a space of healing, we come into a space of grieving. And it's actually when we begin to process those emotions, everything that we've gone through, that the whole chakra system becomes relevant. Because until you start grieving, until you start processing your emotions, the chakra systems do not matter at all. It's only till when we come into the body that we begin to understand the emotions we haven't processed. And in doing so, we understand how those emotions have blocked the chakra system within us. Now, the reason why it's so important to understand the chakra system is because your chakra system, your energy centers, is actually what connects you to the spiritual and grounds you in the earthly. In fact, it's what enables so much of your spirituality to come online in combination with your humanity. But most of us carry so many blocks in our emotional centers that we're so disconnected from feeling, that we're so disconnected from our chakra system, we're so disconnected from our energy centers. And because of that, we have no ability to actually make true, meaningful, profound change in our lives. So many of us seek profound change. So many of us feel it. We feel that inner calling to create something that we know we're just so much more. But we have no idea how to access it. We have no idea actually how to obtain the change that we truly want, the change that we feel deep in our bones, but we just don't know how to go about doing it. And so what I'm aiming to do in these videos is to give you the information to know how to change, to know how to actually activate yourself and to actually bring forth the changes. And that starts first by processing your emotions, coming closer to your body, giving yourself space to grieve your emotions, to grieve what you've been through. Because everything you've been through, stemming back to childhood, when it's been left unaddressed, not only has it wreaked havoc on your life, but we also carry it with us. We carry it energetically, we carry it emotionally, we carry it vibrationally. And what we fail to see is we're actually creating from that which we are carrying, that which we are not processing and that which we are not dealing with. The question is, why? And the answer is because it's painful. But unless we actually head in a direction of understanding it and addressing it and working through it, we will continue to create from that space. We will continue to create from pain and in the process begin to not only repeat our life cycles, but actually repeat the things that make us unhappy. So we come into a space of grieving, we come into a space of processing. And when we come into that space, now this is where knowledge and information is so vital to actually moving through the process. So I'm going to give you guys a basic understanding of the lower three chakras because they are the main ones that are blocked in humanity, from the heart downwards. The reason why most of us are living with a closed off heart is because we haven't processed the emotions in the lower chakras. And it's through the heart chakra that the emotions are actually able to be accepted, to be moved through, to be processed, to be released. And this is what begins to change our emotional vibration. This is what begins to change what we attract and draw to ourselves and into our lives. And so as these videos go on, I'm going to give you more detailed information and understanding as to how to connect to your body, process your emotions and awaken so you can start attracting your dream life. Because it's possible. If I can sit here and be in my dream life, I'm telling you now, it is possible for every single one of us to access a life that feels good. But it starts by feeling good first. Now what happens is when we come into the body, when we recognize the grief, when we recognize what we haven't dealt with, what kind of things are we looking at? What's the kind of emotional content that we're going to be addressing? Well, of course, there's going to be a lot of fear in it. There's going to be a lot of unsafety. There's going to be a lot of shame. There's going to be a lot of guilt. There's going to be a lot of compassion and empathy as you allow yourself to process all of those emotions. Because what happens is, in our earlier childhood experiences, when we come into an spiritually unenlightened society, when we come into an emotional ignorant society, children, we find ourselves growing up in these environments where the emotional maturity isn't there in our parents. And because of that, it creates such an unsafety for our children to grow up in these environments where mum and dad haven't got their shit together. You know, maybe mum's carrying the burden of the whole family. Maybe dad's left, or maybe dad's not present. Dad's working all the time. Whatever those scenarios are that we've come to see and normalize in humanity and society as perfectly normal, inherent within that normalness, there's a huge amount of darkness. And as children, we grow up and we carry the burden of our parents' lack of emotional maturity, and in the process, because our parents are not fully seeing themselves fully, they're unable to see their children fully. And what happens is we come into family units where we are shamed, where we are made to be wrong, where we are blamed for mum and dad's unresolved issues, where we are made to feel like we walk on eggshells, or we feel like we have to achieve to love. And children come into such emotional darkness that it's a very, very, very painful experience to have to move through. But what we fundamentally do in our childhood is we push away and repress so many of those painful experiences. And what we do is we begin to learn to cope. And in our adult lives, we're doing nothing more than just coping with the conditioning we conditioned ourselves to be in, to deal with the trauma. So we come into the childhood conditioning, and what do we find? We find that in childhood, we disconnect from our emotions. And so when we revisit our childhood, when we revisit our emotions, we regress through current life experiences all the way back to how we felt as a child. But through that, we begin to recognize, we begin to understand emotional intelligence. And so as children, as we experience these emotional, neglectful environments, what do? We choose to keep ourselves safe. It's the only choice we have. If you're growing up in a neglectful environment, then what we do is we choose to shut off our heart centers. We choose to disconnect from our emotions. And in the process, disconnect from what we're feeling. And so for most of us living adult lives, we're so disconnected that we don't even recognize we're disconnected. We're so ingrained in our patterns of behavior that we don't even question where our patterns of behavior are coming from. We're so good at deflecting away from our traumas that we blame other people, that we blame life, we blame the world around us. We make out that life's just one big coincidence. We completely deflect the responsibility away from taking ownership and accountability for what we're really feeling. And so connecting back to our emotions is always going to be an uncomfortable process. But through that process, we actually undergo a regression, working from current life experiences, and we regress all the way back to how we felt in childhood. And then as we begin to reconnect with our childhood experiences, we become aware that actually the choices I made in childhood is the sole reason why I'm so unhappy and disconnected in my adult life. It stems all the way back to childhood. And as you begin to move through that, you begin to recognize how painful it was, how alone you felt, how unworthy you felt of actually being truly received by your parents, how much guilt you felt, how much of a bad person that mum and dad's projections actually made you feel. Like in childhood, when we deal with such an emotionally unintelligent society, we take that personally. We begin to see or believe that we are the reason mum and dad's unhappy. We begin to believe that who I am is inherently faulty or wrong or bad or unlovable. And in the process of doing that, that creates such an isolating experience. And in that isolation, there's deep feelings of aloneness. And whenever you're dealing with a child that is being isolated or feels isolated, their emotions are not validated, and they feel so deeply alone, they begin to feel unsafe. And so in our very early childhood, our whole emotional system and guidance system is completely thrown out of whack. Now we feel unsafe in ourselves. Now we feel unsafe in our emotions. Now we invalidate what we feel. Now we invalidate what other people feel. Now we don't trust what we feel. We don't trust other people. We don't trust in human connection. And I think fundamentally, when we really begin to dive deeper into the teachings and to understand the inherent pain and patterns that are within us, we begin to understand that fundamentally, what we learn in this reality on a core experience as a child is that emotional connection is unsafe, which means human connection is unsafe. And unless we choose to head into the direction of healing those wounds, unless we choose to head in the direction of dealing with our emotional content, we will forever live with a closed off heart. And if we live with a closed off heart, how can we attract a life that feels good if we choose to live and operate from an emotionally closed off heart? How can we feel empowered and confident if we carry concepts of shame in our subconscious? How can we live with stability and peace and contentment if we carry fear and instability within our root? How can we live with joy and creativity for being alive if we carry so much guilt? How can we feel truly open and expansive and connected to one another if we carry grief? So when you start to grieve, you come into the process of grieving your childhood. You come into the process of grieving your later life relationships, how you've treated yourself, how you've turned against yourself as the result of the conditioning, the environment that you grew up in. How harsh and horrid you are to yourself. How much you beat yourself up. How much you repeat the behavioural patterns that kept you safe as a child, but are so detrimental in your adult life. It's understanding that when you understand yourself, when you know how to heal, you will awaken. Because beyond healing, when that root chakra is balanced and grounded, you are anchored. You are anchoring the spiritual, the non-physical in the physical. When you are open in the sacral, you are grounding in your creativity. You are connected to your inner child. You feel passion. You feel pleasure. You feel an overwhelming sense of goodness because you're connected to life. It doesn't need drugs. I don't need this. I don't need that. I feel so good within myself because I am so connected to life. When you have processed your shame and your unworthiness, and you're in your confidence, and you're in your empowerment, and you're action orientated, and you're no longer procrastinating, you're out there and you're putting yourself out there because you have your back. You become a powerful creator. When you open this heart space up, you are a magnet. You are a new frequency. You are not operating from the frequencies of the guilt, of the shame, of the fear. You are opening the heart space. And yes, bridging the gap into acceptance and self-love, but ultimately moving into unconditional love, where all of the higher chakras begin to open. Where the throat chakra begins to open, the third eye, your intuition, everything becomes switched on. You are so tuned in, tapped in, connected to life, to God, that is able to speak and express and come through you. When your crown chakra is no longer blocked by your ego and you are an open channel or vessel for source consciousness and you are co-creating a new reality, a new world, because you understand that the only thing that's ever got in my way of living my life to its fullest is my own shit, my own blocks, my own past, my own current life situations, which always reflect that which I haven't addressed. Because the wounds and the belief system you created in your childhood are still the wounds and the belief systems that are creating your life now. And if you truly want to empower yourself with change, know that it is absolutely within yourself. Does that mean that along the way we don't find people that are going to help us? Absolutely not. I have come from some of the greatest teachers. Some of the greatest teachers to ever have graced this planet I have been a student of. But those teachings and those teachers have only ever done one thing, and that's to help me recognize and awaken the teacher within myself. Because it's only through your own awakening do you become the teacher. Because when you understand yourself so deeply, you will understand everybody else. When you understand yourself so deeply, you will hold people in ways they've never been held. When you have held yourself in your pain and in your suffering, you'll be able to truly put your arm around somebody and hold them in it. And that's why Host is such a powerful platform. It's so powerful because not only do we take people through the healing, but we also develop them skills, tools, help them awaken so that they can be the frequency. You are the frequency. You are the frequency that attracts. You are the frequency that repels. You're either living life consciously or unconsciously. And if you truly want to live an empowered life, it's time to tune in to what's going on within. Because I promise you, when you gaze inwardly, your whole world and reality will shift for the better. Till next one, much love.